This is the video for the story session for chapter 3. This week we're going to be doing some revision of the main skills that we've been looking at for the last few weeks. Retrieval, finding information, inference, using the text and our experience together to work out the answers to questions, and clarifying, understanding what words mean. So here's some vocabulary that you may not have heard before that will be in the text today. So the word maroon, this is very hard to clarify if you don't know what it is already, and it's that kind of dark red colour. Tailcoats, well, if you look, there's the word tail and the word coat, so hopefully you have been able to imagine what you think that looks like. And here's a picture. It's a coat that has a longer tail at the back than it does at the front. And knickerbockers, which sounds very strange, and I'm sure you all know what knickers are. However, these are actually more like short trousers that you would wear. And boaters, which are straw hats, which is what it says in the text, but this is really important vocab for you to be able to build up a picture of what's going on. And gruffly. The word gruffly suggests that someone is speaking in a very deep and quite grumpy manner.
Hold still, it wouldn't hurt much. If you had.
So that was a clip of Beauty and the Beast, where Beast was talking gruffly. Okay, so chapter 3. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started, and Dudley had already broken his new cine camera, crashed his remote control aeroplane, and, first time on his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Figg as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. If we go back to the word earned and question 1, here are some clarifying questions that we're going to be revising today. What is most similar in meaning to earned in this text? So which one would I replace it with? The boa constrictor had given Harry his longest ever punishment. The boa constrictor had asked Harry his longest ever punishment. Or the boa constrictor made his longest ever punishment. Well, in this situation, obviously the answer is going to be that he had given Harry his longest punishment. Okay, question 2. What does evading mean? Let's read the next paragraph and see if we can work it out. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no evading Dudley's gang, who visited the house every single day. So evading. Let me go back to it again. It's got ing at the end. Therefore, it must be a verb. It's a doing word. So what are they doing? Harry was glad school was over, but there was no evading Dudley's gang. Well, if they're coming to the house every day, it means he can't avoid them. He can't get away from them. So evading must be something that you're doing when you're trying to get away from something else. Question 3. What does the term Harry hunting suggest about what happens? Let's read the next part. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm and Gordon were all big and stupid. But as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dudley's favourite sport, Harry hunting. Okay, Harry hunting. It's a sport and they're happy about it. But Harry's always trying to get away from Dudley. So the term Harry hunting suggests that when they get to him, they do something quite horrid. I would imagine they either hurt him in some way, or they taunt him and say horrible things to him. So again, the term Harry hunting suggests that they like to tease Harry and taunt him. Chapter 3. Here are some inference questions, some questions where we'll need to use clues from the text to help us work out the answers. This was why Harry spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school, and for the first time in his life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had a place at Uncle Vernon's old school, Smeltings. Piers Polkiss was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, the local comprehensive. Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuffed people's heads down the toilet first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilet's never had anything as horrible as your head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran, before Dudley could work out what he said. Okay, let's go to question 1 then. What does a tiny ray of hope suggest about Harry's mood? If you want to have a go, you could always pause the video before you answer. Well, a tiny ray of hope suggests that Harry's mood is improving. Because obviously before, when he's at school, he's had Dudley there. But this tiny ray of hope, this small thing, not being in the same school in September, will help him to be hopefully happier at school. So the tiny ray of hope suggests he's feeling better about going back to school than he ever has before. Question 2. What does the phrase before Dudley could work out what he said suggest about Dudley? Well, if we go to the bottom, before Dudley could work out what he said. Well, I know that working out means trying to do something so you can get an answer. So at the moment, perhaps Dudley doesn't understand. This suggests that Dudley is not a very intelligent young man, because if he was intelligent, he probably would have grabbed Harry or hurt Harry, as he often liked to do. Question 3. What impression do you get of Harry from this section of the text? Okay, so this is about everything in this page, not the pages previously. So I'm going to think about all the different parts that tell me something about Harry. So here, spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays. This tiny ray of hope. Harry then says, the poor toilet's anything as horrible as your head down it, it might be sick. Harry said something quite mean to Dudley, however, it's because he doesn't like Dudley. So what impression do I get? Well, first of all, I get the impression that he's quite lonely because he spends as much time as possible out of the house. He doesn't want to be in the house talking to the people. The next thing is, he said something quite funny but quite mean to Dudley. So he's obviously brave about getting his own back on Dudley, even though Dudley hurts him. So I'll start again. My impression is that he's quite lonely because he's on his own, wandering around outside the house. But he's also quite brave and he sticks up for himself in situations where people are being unkind to him. So on this slide, we're going to be thinking about the retrieval questions. How can we find the evidence we need to answer these? So question 1, list 4 items that Dudley needed to have for his new school. So as you're going through the text, try and see if you can highlight things that it says to do with his school. Now it says Smeltings boys. Now we know that Smeltings boys are people that go, or boys should I say, that attend Smelting School, because we found out that Smelting School is where Dudley's going. And it says wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks used for hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. So we now know the knobbly sticks are not just something that they find, but they're actually something that they are actively encouraged to use at the school, so it's something that they also need. So there's your answer. Maroon tailcoats, knickerbockers, a boater and a knobbly stick. So altogether that was 4 items. Okay, true or false? So something for each of these. Harry had a terrible time at Mrs. Figg's house. And we're going to go back and have a look for what it said about Mrs. Figg's house. Here I can see the word Mrs. Figg here. So I'm going to read those sentences to begin with. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his Smeltings uniform, leaving Harry at Mrs. Figg's. Okay, it doesn't tell me anything there at that time about whether it was good or bad. So next sentence, Mrs. Figg wasn't as bad as usual. She wasn't as bad. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she'd had it several years. So it wasn't the greatest day of his life, but the statement says Harry had a terrible time at Mrs. Fig's house, and actually she let him watch television and she wasn't as bad. So the answer is false. Okay, next one. The cake did not taste very nice. Right, now I'm going to circle the part where it says a bit of chocolate cake and then read that sentence. Gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she'd had it several years. Now I know that if I've had food for several years, it's probably gone off or mouldy. Cake has a lot of sugar in it though, so it's often preserved for a bit longer than other foods. However, it probably tasted quite stale, which means to have been out in the air for a long time. So the cake probably did not taste very nice, so I could say that the answer was true. And last but not least, Smelting's school disliked violence. Now, if I dislike something, it means I don't like something, and violence means hitting, punching, kicking, anything like that. Now, I'm going to go back to where it says knobbly sticks. The knobbly sticks, it says used for hitting each other, and then I remember it said it's supposed to be good training for later life, so the school obviously think it's a good idea. So false. Smelting's school encouraged violence. Okay, so this is the last slide. It's based on the text that we saw in the previous slide, and here's some questions for us. Number 1, what does paraded mean? Well, this question is another clarifying question. It's asking me about what a word means. If I look at paraded, it's got ed at the end, so that's a verb. It must be doing. Let's find out who's doing it. Well, it's Dudley that paraded around the living room for the family in his brand new uniform. Now, we know that Dudley and his parents are really proud of him going to Smeltings, so parading around the living room must be quite a proud moment for them. So it would be a bit like showing off, I would imagine, walking around and showing off his new clothes. Next question, number 2. What impression do you get of Smelting's school from this text? Well, we already found out that they have to wear hats, tailcoats, knickerbockers. These are quite old-fashioned items of clothing, so perhaps Smeltings is a very old school. It also says that they carried knobbly sticks to hit each other when the teachers weren't looking. Now, and this was supposed to be good training for later life, so obviously the school encouraged them to be tough with each other. So the impression I get is that it's a very tough school that encourages them to hurt each other in order for them to become a tougher in character. Not necessarily something that everyone agrees with, however that's the impression I get from the school. Question 3. Why do you think they aren't sending Harry to Smeltings? Well, again, if we go back to it, Smeltings boys, their uniform is very unusual. It sounds like something you're more likely to wear if you go to a private school where you'd have to pay to attend. So I'd imagine they would not want to spend money on Harry because they've already mistreated him quite a lot. They're not going to spend money sending him somewhere that they believe is a good place to go to school. And also, I'd imagine Dudley would quite like not to have Harry there because he absolutely despises him. So there's 2 reasons why we think that they're not sending Harry to Smeltings. Okay, so hopefully we've revised a few of the things that we've been practicing in our reading comprehension. So retrieval, make sure if you're asked a question where it's in the text, you need to find that information before you tick true or false or give an answer. If you're clarifying, that means trying to find out the meaning of a word or a phrase. Make sure that you find the word, that you read the sentence. Think about, is it a verb, is it a noun, what kind of word is it, and how can that help you to work out what it means? And also use what you know about that situation. If you've been in that situation or something similar, you might know more than you think about that word. And inferring. When you're inferring, make sure that you find the evidence that is linked to the question that you're talking about, and then think about, what do I know already that would help me to answer this question? Always giving clues from the text, always going back and saying, this is what I think and this is what it says in the text. always about combining our ideas with clues from the text. Okay, good luck. Bye.